On the phone, take a quick look and review the minutes from the May meeting. And if there are not any corrections, additions, or deletions, I will take a motion in a second to accept the minutes as they are.
Motion. Second.
Dr. Clemency and Dr. Lynch. Thank you. Moving on is the CMAC and SEMSCO report. Dr. Bart, you're not on the line, are you? You're working? Okay. Hey, Ron, are you on the line? Ron, since I was not at the CMAC or the SEMSCO, could you give a update of the meeting for everyone? Hang on one second. Okay, try now, Ron.
Can you hear me now?
No.
I didn't get it all the way up.
It is all the way up.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Is there anybody else who was at the CMAC or SEMSCO meeting who can give us an update? You there, Brian?
I'm sorry.
All right. Sorry, Ron, not to cut you off, but just we're having a hard time here in the meeting, hearing you.
You're breaking in and out here on the phone.
Sorry.
Right, if you could talk exactly the same volume and quality that he is. Thank you.
So, not to put you on the spot, because I know you weren't prepared to give a CMAC or SEMSCO report.
It's okay, I have notes.
All right.
I believe Mike was there too, if I missed anything.
No, hang on one second, Ron. Brian Bronner is going to give a quick update. Hey, Brian, any chance you want to come here and talk into the phone?
No chance whatsoever.
Move that over on the side.
I'll work on
Yeah,
that.
it's like the Stone Ages over here.
Okay. From CMAC, Training and Education reported that they were adding a printer and turning cards around in an estimated 12 to 14 days. So for the medic students, you'll take the test and actually have paper pretty quickly. AEMT pass rates are still lousy at like 80%. They are forming a tag to update the CC curriculum and further discuss the role of the critical care throughout New York State, as the collaborative protocol kind of changed that role, and there was a lot of discussion there. There was also a change to the CIC regulation. If you're expired more than 2 years, they changed that you must be currently practicing at or above the level of care that you want to teach and complete all of the requirements at the time of application of your certification for a CIC. Med Standards approved a whole bunch of protocol changes, including the collaboratives. Training is going to be on a regional basis, and they're looking for a September 2016 launch of the regional protocol. They rescinded CMAC Advisory 0202 for redundancy, that was the AED thing, and modified VLS protocols to eliminate MAST. CMAC Advisory 9704 also rescinded, that related to the use of masks. There was a discussion about 9703. We're waiting to hear from the STAC and EMSC committees for advisory information. They're seeking a tag for an alternative formulary group and want pharmacists for participation. And they gave an update on Check and Check, where basically everybody is on board, and they've had no failures with 11 uses.
Ryan, excuse me, piece 9703 was what?
Of course, you want to look that up.
Oh, if you don't know, it's fine. Just
Was
like
that
over
no
here.
failures?
I don't think so.
No worries.
And somebody look up 9703 real quick. Thanks. We got 4 state history, they'll figure it out. Bureau gave its report. They're looking at amendments to Part 800. They filled 3 positions, including promoting some people. Congratulations, Ed, and your 2 counterparts throughout the state. There's an opening statewide for a trauma coordinator. Hospitals, not in our region, but somewhere, complaining about not receiving PCRs, so that continues to be an issue. And everybody is seeking input on cost reporting regarding Medicaid costs for transportation, so you should be receiving questionnaires related to that. New MOLS forms are going to be pushed out, and an update to the New York State BLS protocols, and that was pretty much it from the CMAC. It was the same as the SEMSCO, and we had the one CON issue where the WREMAC's decision on the Mercy CON was overturned, and Mercy was issued permanent operating authority by the SEMSCO at the last meeting. Did I miss anything, Mike?
No, sounds good.
What were those, 97?
So
So
there's no 9703 on the state website that we can find.
Maybe it's been removed already.
Those are
It's
our
already-
policy statements, those are CMAC
It's
advisory.
CMAC advisory.
9701 was persons with hemophilia, rescinded March of 16. 9702 was biphasic AEDs, rescinded March of 16. 9703 is hyperventilation in severe traumatic brain injury. And 9704 is masked.
For those of you on the line, they're just going through the Bureau policy statements that were rescinded, which included the outdated statements on AED, mask pants, hemophiliacs, and hyperventilation and head injuries.
97 was a bad year
No.
apparently for the science.
9703 has not been rescinded yet. They're still waiting for input from EMSC and staff on that.
Okay.
So that's still out there.
Brian, you had mentioned the collaborative protocols with the estimated rollout date of September. Was there a discussion of what educational materials that group would be?
Yeah.
The educational materials expected to roll out in September. We're working on development at this point.
Right, so for those of you on the phone, the discussion was about the collaborative implementation date, and the discussion is that there actually is, they sent out, for the collaborative group, sent out an email this past week looking at potential dates to get together and start to have discussion about kind of a generalized education plan, to put a conference call together to roll that out. And then there will be options, I believe, still for regional updates, if there are things that we think our region, big overhauls or things that have been previously something we weren't doing here that's not covered in the general updates, then we would have the option to do something as a REMAC ourselves. So those meetings should be starting out in the next couple of weeks. The tentative date for the education to be done is September, is that correct?
Yeah, that's so anytime in 2020.
So as far as our implementation here, and the implementation will change, I think, based on the different regions, but once we have a better idea of what the educational requirements are going to be, what they'll entail, how long they'll be, when they're ready, then we can talk about at our region what we want to set as our go-live date for that. There's a question on the phone? In September. September.
That's for having the education ready, not for the providers to be educated.
Correct, for the education to be ready in September, not to actually be rolled out. Sorry, Todd, this is Donna's crappy phone, it's the best I can do right now.
They also told us that University of Rochester was going to make available their testing system for all of us to use. So we would all be able to test off of the same platform.
Right. And those would be like podcasts or things that you could view the education online that University of Rochester is going to host. So we'll have more updates as we start getting in these meetings in the next month or so. Hopefully by our next REMAC we can have some more concrete dates in mind there.
Are we, sorry to interrupt, but are we set, once we pick a date, are we set to transition over, or do we need any other approval from the state for us to transition to the collaborative protocols?
No, we've signed the.
We're set with the CMAC and everything, so we can pick a date and just start.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Ron, are you still on the phone there? I know Brian mentioned it, it's listed under new business, but maybe you can talk about right now. I think there's been discussion at the last CMAC SEMSCO meetings, the last several of them, about the role of the critical care level in the future. Do you have anything else to add about that or the discussions that took place?
Well, I could not hear at all what was being said, basically, but the medical standards, Dr. Marshall brought it up towards the end of the meeting. And basically the question was, do we really need that level? Obviously, that level doesn't exist. They actually told, we call cardiac checks today for certain across the country in one way. And so it's not standard. And so he questioned it a lot. There was a fair amount of discussion. We went through training in that committee. Obviously, stuff like that up there for pretty much there's a lot of interest. The data's already on record. I think they're not going to get rid of it.
Did you guys all hear that in the room?
Use the word wither on the vine.
All right. So basically what Ron said is that there was some discussion, a lot of discussion about the role of the CC level now that we've made the decision to go to the national standards as a state, and that I guess the tag was put together to look at what that role is going to be versus the AMT level now going forward. I think that we've all been talking about this for a long time, is that the critical care, I'm not sure what the ultimate decision for the state is going to be, but I think it's something we need to look at seriously as what the role is going to be long-term and if it's something that's going to be viable in this region. So I know we've talked about this in the past. I know that we, a couple of years ago, had a discussion at the WREMAC and talked about wanting to see all the regions transition from offering CC classes to paramedic classes, because one of the obstacles that we realized was that we didn't at the time have enough paramedic options in the Big Lakes area and the southern tier in that at the time. So I'm just going to kind of do an informal poll of people in the room and on the phone. Let's start with Wyoming Erie. Are we offering any CC courses, or are they all paramedic?
After the tone, please state your name, followed by the pound sign.
The audio works now.
There are 10 parties in conference.
Don't
No,
hang
no,
up.
just mute it.
Don't hang up.
Mute it.
Just mute it. Just mute it.
There are CC providers, yes, we have no program.
I think you need to be using that one to talk.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, so
Can you guys hear us on the phone? Can you guys hear us on the
Not
phone?
great. Not very well.
Is it better or worse than it was before?
It's better. It depends on the topic.
Yeah, it's better.
All right, well, good. Progress, okay.
all right, so in Wyoming area, you're not offering any CC courses? All right. Do you have any idea how many CCs you have in the area?
Fewer than 5.
Fewer than 5? All right.
Doesn't Trip still offer CC programs?
That's the least. Within agencies in here in Wyoming County. No, there are few.
Okay. And then,
5 ourselves. There might be one more.
all right. So there's a handful
Let's
of...
say it doesn't.
So it's
handful of CCs.
7 less.
Some of them might have be registered in other, north and come down, so.
In the southern tier, I know that we are not offering any CC.
No, that's not true.
Allegheny County.
Allegheny
Oh, I
County
take
is
that back.
Yeah, they're testing.
They're testing tonight.
Yeah,
I believe
it's around 90. I think there's about 16 of them, right? If I'm not mistaken.
How many students are in that?
16.
16 students? Okay.
12 students.
12 students.
12 students.
All right.
Well, maybe that's all that made it.
Yeah.
And how about then in the Big Lakes area? Any idea?
Yeah, we have two places, Niagara University and Trip. They get Trip usually about 3 a year, and NU I'm not too sure on how many they actually pump through, but we do have a pretty substantial amount of critical cares, a little over a dozen at least, a little over a dozen CC providers. And
Over a dozen? Okay. And how many students are you in the Big Lakes area are we training a year?
For a year, that's probably about, I'd say about 6 if that.
And in Allegheny County, does anybody know, are we offering CC classes every year?
No, we're gonna, the current plan, I believe, is CC every other year, and AEMT in the year we don't offer CC. No decisions are made.
So I guess the discussion then that I want to have is, what is, we know that the state has said that there's going to be, we don't know what the role of CCs is going to be in the future. And if we're putting together a tag, we don't know what the outcome of that is going to be, but my concern is that if we continue to train CCs and the state is going to be moving away from them in the future or limiting their scope more in the future, then I don't know that that's the best long-term solution for the region as a whole, the REMAC. there's other
I
thoughts.
think there's two questions. One question is what to do with existing CCs, and the second question is do we continue to train new CCs? I think those are two different issues. I think the low-hanging fruit is as long as we keep credentialing new CCs, there is no force to bring paramedic education to those areas that just have CC education only. And so I think that in part of the national standards, and regardless of what the state does, I think we should pick a date and stop credentialing new CCs. I don't think those particular areas will foster paramedic education as long as we're still having CC education in those locations. It's a different issue what to do with the existing CCs. I think something should be looked at, but I think our first step should say, let's start promoting paramedic education and let's stop credentialing new CCs, because the more we do that, we just get ourselves further in this hole. And AEMT is now much larger, and so the jump from what was traditionally the CC line to traditionally the EMT 88 line 5-6 years ago was a fairly big gap. Today, the gap between the new collaborative protocol CC line and the national standard AEMT line that we have in New York is much closer than it ever was before. And so these are skilled individuals who can practice at the AEMT level of care down the line. But I think the first step is to, as a REMAC, say we are not credentialing new CCs. Please don't educate new CCs, educate AEMTs or paramedics.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the difference in the educational course for the CC versus the AEMT versus the next? Like for the CC, you have to have AEMT first.
You do not have to. No, so all three of the advanced levels currently recognized by New York State, AEMT, EMTCC, and paramedic, all can be can go directly from basic to those. There is no stepping stone requirement.
Brian, can I just
Okay, so what's the length of the course for CC versus the length of the course and financial implications? I'm just thinking, are there people that can only take the CC because of time constraints that won't take the medic because it takes more than a year and they can't swing it with their employment?
And that's certainly a possibility, but if you can't put the additional hours in, then that's not, I don't think that's a reason for us to promote a level of care where the skills are not in line with the education. I think we should be actively promoting those people who have the concern that we just expressed, and I realize that's a concern, to do AEMT education. A level where we have national standards that better align with the number of classroom hours and the educational goals and are validated. There is no set number of hours for any of these curriculums anymore, right? These are all goals and objective based. These are not pure hours the way they used to be. So I can tell you paramedic tends to be 1,100 hours-ish. Intermediate is like 4 or 5, right? How many hours for
600 for the critical care.
600 typically.
Minimum hours, yeah.
And then how many for?
I think I won 350.
350 for AMT. So again, although there's not a set number, generally it's somewhere in the neighborhood of from the room, 350 to 400 for AEMT, 600 or more for CC, and 1,100 for paramedic. So we see our paramedics have twice as much, and if you can't be a paramedic, that's okay. AEMT is a good level of care that has the most evidence-based interventions associated with it, and correlates the educational goals with the skill sets.
I think one of the discussions that we had when the AMT level came up was looking at the CCs and, in these rural outlying areas where we have a shortage of providers and a shortage of paramedics, that when you look at those true life-saving interventions that are important in the first few minutes before you have a paramedic there, really that's what the AMT level was designed for. Those are the skills that they have. And I think that honestly, the best bang for the buck when you're looking at number of hours and number of skills you can do that are truly life-saving, I think the AEMT fits that role. And if, I think the question that you were driving at was, for those people that cannot sit through an entire, or commit to an entire paramedic class, certainly the AMT course is $350?
It's actually 227, I lied.
227?
So, which is
All right,
not
so
bad.
227 hours for the AMT class is a pretty short class compared to the CC, which is 600, give or take.
Brian?
Is there still, does a minimum still exist for CCs?
Well, I mean, it's
Just
that's
that's where they end up
curriculum
ending up.
encompasses
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that, you know.
yeah.
I mean, it's about equivalent, but yes, you're right, it's content based versus, it's the educational standards, so.
I see this becoming a lengthy discussion. Might I suggest that we try to finish the bullet points of the agenda before we enter into new business?
Yeah, I guess what I would like, because I don't think that this is something that we're going to come up with an answer on today, but I think when this discussion came up 2 years ago, I mean, you were still the chairman, right, Brian?
Yep.
I think we talked about, we wanted to start transitioning away from the CC level, but we wanted to make sure we had the infrastructure and we're offering paramedic classes in all regions of the REMAC, and that was one of the things that we didn't have available. And so I guess I don't want to necessarily come up with an answer today. I think it's something we need to start talking about. I think we need to have some honest discussions back at our regional councils and at all the county councils discussing the role of CCs, both, what's the long-term viability, right, which is probably going to be limited from the state perspective going forward. And more importantly, how do we offer more paramedic education in the regions if we have areas and blocks where we don't have paramedic courses available in the 8 counties of Western New York right now? And that's something that was supposed to be, when we had this discussion 2 years ago, it was supposed to be solved by this point, and I don't know that we've solved it adequately, and I think we really need to look at that, because I think going forward, if we keep training all these CCs and the state starts to cut back their scope or limit what they can do, then as a region, we're going to suffer in the long term. And although there's going to be some people bent out of shape by this, I think that we need to take an honest look at this and try and do proactively what's the best thing for the region long term. So I'm going to move on. Josh, I appreciate your point, and I think we'll move on, but I think that this is something I want to have everybody discuss, and that when we come back, we'll have a further discussion at that point, and maybe we'll have some feedback from the TAG or some of the discussions around the state at that time that we can incorporate in to maybe help have us make a better, more informed decision. Moving on then, I'm going to go.
Frank, before we move off this topic, there is one wrinkle that I think is worth mentioning, and that's the funding for the AEMT class. The reimbursement rate for course sponsors is very, very low. I want to say it's actually lower than the EMT reimbursement rate, or very close to it. So it makes it difficult to train AEMTs at that reimbursement level. So I think in an effort to get a higher reimbursement rate, they're training CCs in Allegheny County and then having them function at the AEMT level. So I think that's part of the issue while we're seeing continued original CCs.
Okay.
So it's an important point that I think everyone has to understand.
No, I think that's a very important point. Scott?
And I don't want to belabor it, but the issue is that we're trying to survive on state reimbursement for all of our programs, and you can't do it. And that's why they have changed the reimbursement policy to allow places to charge tuition. The most recent example is specialty course sponsors for instructor update classes. So for CIU courses, for CLIs and CICs, specialty course sponsors, we've had our funding basically locked. So now we are at the point where we have to decide either we find a way to do this for free, or we now have to charge existing instructors to take CIU classes just to maintain their certification, to be able to go out and like this is probably a way bigger bombshell than charging tuition for AEMT classes. Through public health law, the only thing that is required to be funded is basic EMT training. Okay, so anything beyond that is just because there happens to be a surplus in the budget, and Andy Johnson, who heads up the Education and Certification Unit, has made it very, very clear for a very long time that we don't honestly know how we've continued to be able to fund and find the money for advanced level classes, but that we should not use that as our plan for the future to be able to offer these classes. Students paying tuition for advanced level classes is going to become a reality probably very soon.
Can you tell them what our rates went from?
I don't remember, it's $15 a student?
It went from $950 a class to $15 a student.
And you might get 15 people in a class.
For an instructor, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
And $950, you were still taking a loss.
Yes.
Is there anyone from our region who's sitting on that CC tag?
Nikki is, I think.
Nikki is? Okay. Mickey, are you on the phone?
Yeah,
So you're on the CC tag, is that correct?
yeah, both groups of it, yeah.
Okay, can you just, in your discussions or your emails and that, maybe you can bring up the issue of the AEMT reimbursement, because if that's one of the stumbling blocks, maybe that's something the state should look at about increasing or distributing the AEMT versus CC reimbursement a little bit differently.
Be happy to.
Thank you. All right, moving along, the WREMAC Chairman's Report. I'm going to move past that because I don't have any big issues right now. We'll go to the Trauma Advisory Committee. Beth, are you on the line?
I am, they don't have any report.
Okay, very good. Then next is the Nurse Advisory Committee report, our newly reinstated Nurse Advisory Committee headed by Bruce Trepaz, who I know that they have been hard at work and come up with some discussions in the last meeting and mission statement. So Bruce, do you want to update everyone?
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, kind of covered. We finally had our first meeting. It was well attended. We got an array of different hospitals from across the region, which is very good. A lot of discussion. Some of the things that came up for areas to bridge the medical care was the pre-hospital care report. We realized that, as everybody knows, there's a lot of variation in both practice and the information that's relayed. So one of our take backs is for all the area hospitals to bring their current process and what they would like for in the pre-hospital care report. So that's one of the first initiatives we're going to take a look at. I apologize if it's hard to hear, because I can hear my feedback on the phone itself.
No, we can hear you fine. Keep going.
Okay. So look at probably quarterly meetings. I know we're going to schedule the first one just after Labor Day. It's going to be the next follow-up meeting for us. And you see the minutes that were attached. And we're looking then, as we do this, and then what other ideas and opportunities that we can assist everybody.
Very good. I think it's a great way to share information from what the REMAC and the EMS community is doing with the hospitals, and I think it is another link in the chain and one that was kind of overlooked for a little bit, so I think that this is a big asset to us, and I appreciate you taking this on and everybody on the committee who's been involved. So thank you, Bruce.
Oh, good. It's a pleasure.
All right. If there's no questions for Bruce, then we'll move on to the program agency reports, starting with Lake Plains, and I'll ask that you guys come up and speak into the phone.
All right, well, we had quite a different assortment of trainings that were offered. Just getting some medical director changes, LVNFDs changing to Dr. Farney. They're all getting on board in Orleans County on the same medical director, which is kind of nice with collaboration. Also the annual skills reminder that's coming up to the end of this month. And then we're having a certified instructor update September 24th at East Shelby, pending DOH approval. But that's in the works right now. And then, of course, November 15th, Lee Burns is having a state of EMS meeting at Niagara County PSDM. That's pretty much about it.
What's the date on that?
November 15th.
And is there a time for that at all? Or?
They're looking probably, what, 7?
7.
Yeah, 7.
7 p.m.?
So,
okay, very good. Thank you. Up next is STEMS. Abby?
Okay, so since the last meeting, still have 4 late PCRs from Allegheny, 2 from Allegheny, 2 from Chautauqua. We have 12 agencies that are adopting ePCR and 37 that are live. We have 3 skills fairs, and I've been really pushing agencies on skills being due June 30th, as well as keeping up on certification expirations, letting them know when An EMT has a certification expiring within the next 6 months. Upcoming events, we have a Less is More training, June 26th. It's going to be held at Olean and broadcasted to the All-Star. And it's about how to deal with a patient you suspect of child abuse. And that's by Karen Hill. And then on July 26th, Makai is doing a pediatric trauma triage live in Olean and broadcasted to Jones and All-Star.
Very good. Thank you. And next, Scott.
The program agency report was distributed. I'm going to highlight 5 things actually off of this. The first one's going to be the EMS division web-based provider portal, because that relates directly to the WREMAC, the providers, as well as the medical directors. So as I reported previously, we have contracted to have a web-based provider portal put into place where individual providers can manage their certifications, their credentials, and it's also a tool for services to be able to see where their providers stand collectively, who's associated with their agency. They can disassociate members who are either terminated or no longer affiliated with the service, they've resigned or whatnot. And they can also see their approvals with the WREMAC and the ability to be able to see real-time updates. So as services are submitting for approval to the WREMAC, things like CPAP and check and inject and all of those approvals du jour. As we make changes in the system, it notifies the providers that the approval was received and that it was acted on and the date that it was approved. So it creates a level of transparency. There's access for medical directors to be able to see who the providers are who are working under their license, what their current regional privilege level is. They also get notified if somebody is taken offline or if they end up with an expired credential. And it also notifies the administrators for each of these services. So at this point, we have 3 services that are actually up and live and have their providers registered. They were our beta test agencies, and just this week, we're starting to cross the bridge into the larger services, Twin City, Rural Metro, and also Mercy Flight, Mercy EMS, and I demonstrated it to Twin City this past Monday. Don't know if they've had an opportunity to get in there and play around with it at all or not, but essentially what the plan is moving forward is this is going to be our reporting tool for compliance with next year's credentialing deadline for June 30th, 2017. So all the agencies in Erie and Wyoming County will need to be on that system by then, but our goal is that we will be able to get everyone on board long before that. What we're doing is we're working with the larger services because they have really the heavier lift in all of this. We're working with the larger services so they can let us know when they're going to be able to be live with the system, and then we can really kind of work everybody else in around that. Mike Krupski from our office is going to be going out and in-servicing all 108 EMS services in the Wyoming-Erie region to get their providers up and running. So medical directors, we're going to be reaching out to you so that we can get you your login. You'll be able to go in, you'll be able to see all the activities of your providers and your services, and you will have privileges again within there. So we'll be reaching out to you in the next couple of months. New York State is doing, the Bureau is doing a BLSFR update, so all the BLSFR services, of which there are I think 42 in the Erie, Wyoming region, all 42 of those services are going to need to complete an update. To the best of my knowledge, all of those who have completed are listed in here. I think there's only 4 or 5. So we still have a long way to go. This is important because BLSFR is what, that state code is what entitles you to get the free EMS training, and it also allows you to participate in the CME-based recertification program, which is kind of the carrot at the end of the stick. In order to do that, you need to be routinely providing care within the EMS system, and about every 5 years the Bureau does this to make sure that those who say that they're doing it actually are. There's a medical direction line now at the Buffalo VA. The number is listed in there. The VA has also asked that we communicate. There's been some providers, or I'm sorry, some patients rather, who have been taken not to the VA when they've been when they presented with a possible STEMI. The VA is a 24/7 emergency cardiac cath lab, And VA patients, if possible, should be taken to the VA for those procedures and for that care. They are capable of receiving 12 EKGs too, and the fax number is listed in the report. The second to last thing I want to report is Mercy Hospital Buffalo. On July 1st, will no longer offer inpatient pediatric services. The emergency department is still capable of caring for emergency pediatric patients, but they will no longer have inpatient services available. The last thing is regarding annual awards. We spend a lot of time talking about annual awards each year and recognizing the people throughout the year who do a great job in our region. The Wyoming Area Regional EMS Council, I believe, nominates somebody for every single category every year. And this year, the report that came back from our director, Lee Burns, is that the participation across the state was absolutely dismal. And that's really a disappointing thing, because this is really an opportunity to give recognition where recognition is due. To that end, I think she used her, I don't know if she kicks right or left, but she kicked it into Mike Taylor's lap, I believe, and I think he's the one who's kind of taken this program over for New York State, so we're going to kind of see some revamping on that in the near future, so we should expect to see some communication. If you have ideas and ways to improve it, Mike's here. If you don't want to talk about EPCR, you can lump them up with awards. That's my report.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, moving on the agenda, the subcommittee reports list ALS protocols, which really is the collaborative protocols now, which we've already talked about. So we can move on to the QI committee. Alex? Yes, Alex, can you come talk to the phone?
So we're in the process, the QI committee, myself, Scott Wander, Denise, Josh Lynch, and Chris Zemrak, comprised the committee, reviewed a case of a provider who was taken offline, and subsequently petitioned the committee to be reinstated within the WREMAC region. And after looking at extensive supporting data regarding this, basically our decision is that the provider will remain on full restriction, not eligible for privileges within the 8-county Western WREMAC, for 1 year from October 1st, which is on or about when he was taken offline. After which time, he may apply for privileges within the WREMAC, but must disclose the sanction on all future provider privilege applications, and must notify prospective services medical directors of the sanction for employment or membership as an EMS provider. Any prospective medical director is strongly encouraged to QA all patient care activities, and for a minimum of 1 year after being placed back online.
Thank you.
In that, is the Melrem's area notified that there's a situation?
They are notified, yes. I think in the past, the QI committee, I guess thankfully, has not had a whole lot of cases and issues to review. I think you guys spent a lot of time reviewing this case. There was a lot of data and interviews involved, and I think you guys did a very good job, so I appreciate that. And I think it's, our job is to try and be fair when we review these things, and not to limit anybody's ability to work or to practice, but also make sure that we're doing it safely, and I think you guys come up with a reasonable outcome, so I apologize for that. Moving on to our...
Right.
Yes.
That is it's a subcommittee, it's a seconded motion, so the REMAC needs to...
I'm sorry, thank you. So that's a seconded motion, so we need to vote on it? All right.
So it can go under the question, and if there is none, then you can vote on it.
All right, well, that being said, we have a seconded motion from the subcommittee, and if there's any discussion, we can have it now. Any questions? Or
repeat the motion.
The motion was after the QI committee reviewed a case where a provider was taken offline and reviewed all the data. Their recommendation is that that provider shall remain offline for the next year, which is until October 1st, which is a year from the date of occurrence, at which point he will be allowed to be reinstated online in the region. However, the incident and the reasons that he was taken offline need to be disclosed to the medical director and the agency that he applies to for privileges.
Just a slight correction. I believe that the wording was that he is invited to reapply for privileges
Yeah, he's
not
invited.
reinstated.
Okay.
Yeah, he can apply to an agency.
So he's eligible to reapply for
Correct.
privileges not reinstated in his agency he
Not
was assigned.
reinstated for
Correct. All right. Any further discussion on that? Hearing no discussion, then we'll move to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you very much. On to old business, we've already talked about collaboratives. Just a reminder that PPAs, the credentialing is due on June 30th. I think we spent a lot of time the last few years about the policy, what it means, notification processes afterwards. We are certainly not going to rehash any of that today, but the policy is online on the webpage if anyone has any questions. And I think that we've been very firm in the last couple of years that any providers that do not, keep your hand down back there, any providers that do not comply, we've decided that we would hold them accountable and take them offline. Donna, you have a question?
As of August 1st, correct?
The PPAs are due June 30th. The policy, I believe, says that they will be, if they're not compliant, that they will be notified and then be taken offline on.
That we notify them August 1st and they come off August 30th.
I'm going to have to read the policy.
No.
Where is it?
Notify July 1st that they
off
did
August
not,
1st?
and then off August 1st.
Okay, because I know we were having that, we had that problem last year, remember that it was
Yes.
flip-flop.
Right, so we had discussed this in detail. For those of you on the phone, we're just looking at the dates of the actual policy. We had talked about this a lot. We had changed some of the wording and the reporting to accommodate notification in that. It says by August 1st. So the PPA skills are due June 30th. That allows for kind of a month of notification between the program agencies and the providers or the agencies who have not submitted them. And it says that anyone who has not submitted the required information by August 1st will be taken offline at that time. All right. Any other discussion there? No. Just as a quick kind of poll in the region in Big Lakes, how are we doing with submitted?
We got, I believe, 10 agencies so far that submitted out of 68. So
10 out of 68? I think historically people always seem to wait till the last minute in that. How about in Wyoming area?
Last I looked, we were probably about 5 that had submitted.
Out of?
108.
Out of 108? Okay. Steph?
Probably at like 10 out of 92.
All right, so we have some work to do in the next couple of weeks. Go program agencies. But let's make sure we push all of our providers in as medical directors, that we ensure that everybody, all of our agencies get their PPAs turned in also. On to new business. We've already talked about the AMTs and critical cares. The next, we have a guest speaker from the Bureau of EMS, Mr. Mike Taylor, would like to talk about EPCRs. Mike, you get to talk into our high-tech phone.
So I see that. Well, thank you everyone for having me. This was a last-minute thing, as I had been meaning to get a hold of Dr. Walters for like the past 2 weeks and just didn't until like yesterday, like what, 5 o'clock last night or something. You were in bed when I called you or something. I don't know.
I had to work overnight. It wasn't like I was
So for those of you who don't know me, Michael Taylor from the State EMS office. I'm out of the Albany office. My current position, we don't quite have a title for it, so I just kind of use the title State EMS Quality Improvement and Informatics Manager.
Can you just hold the phone while you're talking?
Oh my goodness. Can you hear me on the phone? Can you hear me on the phone? Is anybody on the phone?
Yeah.
Hear you.
Okay. If you lose me, just say so. I've now got the phone in my hand. Very cute, Brian. Best meeting I've ever been to. So
you're on video too. Don't worry. We got it.
Oh, am I? Oh, great.
Just like karaoke.
Karaoke. I'm on karaoke. Great. So most of you know me as the EPCR guy for the state, which is what I am. But the larger picture of that is quality improvement. Article 30 speaks to both quality improvement programs and to PCRs. And since 2008, we've been playing with electronic PCRs. The PCRs are clearly tied into the quality improvement program of New York State as a whole. The quality improvement programs legally rest with the EMS agencies, and then they can go together and partner to do regional QA and such. And that's where we've developed over the last 20 years the QA program, that it's the agencies cooperating regionally to do regional QA with oversight of the WREMAC and the medical control docs and such. And then larger issues and such we bring up to the state level and QA them on that level and such. And that's how our system works. But it's all based on data from the PCRs. Forever we did the paper PCRs. Is there anybody in the room here or on the phone who has never even touched a paper PCR? Oh, good. Because we're getting to that generation where there are those that don't even know what a paper PCR looks like, so I have to ask that question. So the PCRs, the paper PCRs forever didn't give us any data. We could use them kind of very scratch the surface of QA. Now with the electronic PCRs, the data set is much more robust, both statewide and even regional data, and most places local data, to effectively pull the PCR data into doing quality improvement, medical oversight, reviewing protocols and appropriateness of protocols, and all of that. If we are not there, we are quickly getting there. So in that, one of the pieces of the quality improvement is making sure that we have the robust data from our EMS services, particularly those that are doing the high impact EMS stuff, i.e. our ALS services. Okay, you look at the most recent collaborative protocols, and I got to tell you, as an EMS provider for 30 years, and most of that at the ALS level, it was a little frightening to me, some of the protocols that are now out there, and the algorithms that are now have to be followed, and the if then what else if this kind of format to some of them. They can be confusing, and they're going to require some good, solid oversight by the quality improvement programs and by the medical directors. But they can't do that without the quality data, without the robust data that's provided by the electronic PCRs. So in looking at how to better tie the PCRs and the ePCRs into the quality improvement system across New York State, we meaning Lee Burns, the state director, and I started talking about what if the WREMACs were to require electronic PCRs for all ALS services. Now, this is not a new concept. There is more than one region in the state that already does this. Central New York, Finger Lakes, Monroe, Livingston, already require electronic PCR reporting for any ALS service, and in a lot of cases, I think Finger Lakes, they didn't say ALS, BLS, they said if you do so many calls, you'll do electronic PCRs. And that's all because of quality oversight. My understanding from talking to those regions is that they are thankful that they did it, because they have a tremendous ability to look quickly at PCRs that are in question. When a patient care issue happens this morning, they can look at the information that afternoon and resolve issues quickly, and have a better oversight of their system in general. The folks that have done this really are thankful that they did. So Lee asked me to start talking to the regional medical directors, Dr. Walters and his counterparts across the state, and in cases where they wanted me to talk to the WREMACs, to their WREMACs about this, to just think about it, open the discussion. You know, in some regions it'll be, yep, let's do it. In some regions it'll be, we can't really do it at this point, but let's keep it in the back of our minds for down the road. We just want the WREMACs to have the discussion about would it be possible, would it be better for our region as a whole and our system as a whole to have the ALS services have to be electronic PCR reporting in order to be credentialed ALS. Again, it's not, don't take this as the WREMAC doing the dirty work of the state, okay? Don't take this as, well, the state can't mandate it, so the WREMACs are. I see you smirking, Scott.
think those were my exact words.
We've had this conversation, you and I, exactly. I'm quoting you is what I'm doing. It's not that at all. This is, it all ties into the quality improvement program for the whole state EMS system. And in order for us to have that program uniformly across the state, all the WREMACs need to consider requiring the EPCRs for the ALS services at least, if not the entire system somehow. As I said, we have some regions that have done it, and they have been thankful that they did have found great success in and usefulness in it. So that was the word from Albany as to what I wanted to ask the WREMAC to at least again have the discussion. It's up to you what you do from here. I just wanted to open the discussion with you or bring it to your attention. So, beyond that, if there's anything you want to know about the state's QI system program, whatever, or the whole EPCR thing, I'll be happy to answer those questions for you too.
Could you speak to the paper PCR changes? So I remember there was some discussion at the state level about making the paper PCRs have to be NEMSIS compliant, and that probably would have pushed many agencies to go to computer, because the paper NEMSIS compliant PCR is like this disaster, right, to do. Where does that stand on the state level? Because I think that would play a role in the local decision.
Yeah, we can't do that.
Okay.
When we started with the EPCRs and the whole NEMSIS thing in 2008, we knew we would have to look at doing something with our paper PCRs, because we realized that the great state of New York just couldn't go electronic overnight or over a decade. So, yes. So what do we do about these paper PCRs that are not NEMSIS compliant and such? So we had a contractor we didn't hire a contractor to do this. Please don't take that. It was a contractor we already had who had the ability to do this, and we said, can you take these NEMSIS version 2 data elements and put them on paper, and let's see what this would actually look like. That's where it came back as an incomplete 12-page document, 12-page PCR. NEMSIS version 3 is quite a few more data elements and a lot more choices in each one of the data elements, which makes more paper. So rough guess at that time would have been on NEMSIS version 3, 20-page paper PCR. Even though that's, again, that's cute, we don't have the wherewithal to create such a document in multi-page format, nor do we have the ability to have the EMS providers actually use that kind of a document. And that just would be just a huge waste of money, time, and resources for something that's unmanageable and unusable. So we're not going to go that way. What we have done is we've taken the paper PCR as it exists. We've mapped it as best it will to the NEMSIS version 2 data elements. Now, when I say mapping, it means that there are things that don't map one for one. But if on the paper PCR, this, and this, then this NEMSIS is yes. Or if this and this, then this is no. So we did mapping like that. The paper PCRs are currently being keyed by FedCap, the key punch contractor we've had forever. And when as they key those, they will dump them into the image trans system, NEMSIS 2. As we migrate this year to NEMSIS version 3 and the NEMSIS version 3 state bridge, there will be no paper dumping into that. Now that being said, the estimate right now is that, well over 80%, if not closer to 90% of our PCR data is coming to us electronically now. 2.5 to 3 million records a year is what we estimate the state runs or puts in the system as PCRs. For the last 3 years, we have gotten 2.5 million records electronically. So we're getting great data capture for the most part statewide. So that's where the paper piece is. We did the fun look-see, and it's just not going to be. We've done the best we can mapping the current to version 2, and that's as far as we can go with that.
So the vast majority of calls are on EPCR right now, 80 to 90%. Do you have any idea about what percentage of agencies? Because obviously there's lots of little tiny agencies that make a small call volume impact, but are large in numbers.
So agency codes, we have about 1,800 agency codes, active agency codes out there. That includes the BLS First Response Services, there's about 700 of those. Remember, the BLS First Response Services, we don't truly regulate in law. We play nice in the sandbox because they're good for our system. 700 services statewide. We all play nice together. So you take those out of the equation, and there's a little less than 1,200 certified services that we do regulate. Most of those, or a large majority of those, are ambulance services, or transporting. Of those 1,200, there's just under 500 that are electronic. So a little less than 500 of the certified services statewide, of the 1,200 certified services are statewide, and that right now is getting us 2.5 million records a year, which is what we traditionally had in PCRs, is 2.5 million.
But you do have some BLSFRs that do EPCRs.
Very few that I know of, one or two statewide. Is there more?
We have, I think,
How many do you have, Donna? Is that
3 or 4.
3 or 4?
And a couple other ones that are looking at it.
So it's
You,
helpful.
Brian, you have some of your agencies, right, that are looking to go to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, that's helpful, thank you.
yeah, I think, I mean, I guess my perspective as a medical director is that certainly it's much easier for me to QI a chart in real time, to look at if there's an issue, to review things when we have EPCRs, because I can do it from my phone, my computer, anywhere. What's that?
No.
Oh,
I'm holding your microphone.
that's good. So, I'm just saying that it's much easier for me to QA charts to look at them in real time when we're on EPCRs. I think the suggestion of having ALS agencies on EPCRs makes sense, because those are going to be your higher acuity patients. They're going to be the ones with more interventions, the ones that are higher risk for bad outcomes or more critical in nature in general, even if it's not a bad outcome that we could have prevented. I guess I'm just kind of curious, and I'll ask the program agencies in general, off the top of your head, what percentage or how many ALS agencies do we have in each region that aren't using EPCRs right now? Anybody have any ballpark estimates, percentage-wise? And I'm not going to quote you or hold you to numbers, but
If you're including the AEMTs, the numbers vary. It's pretty high.
Yeah, it does. I mean, predominantly it's the services that engage in billing. There are certainly ones that do not do third-party billing or any billing of any sort that do utilize it, but that was certainly a driving force. In Wyoming area, we have 19 services that are on EPCR.
do you have any idea of how many CC paramedic agencies, take the AMTs out for right now, but how many CC or paramedic level agencies do not use? That's a hard question off the top of your head.
Yeah, I would.
I could tell you tomorrow morning.
Yeah. My guess that
I
I
don't
would
think
venture
there's
somewhere
many.
in mid-30s that do not, that are at that level.
Good question. Keep going.
I just got a question for Mike in a minute when you're done with your discussion.
No, I was just trying to get an idea of how many agencies this would affect if we did decide to go that route. I think most of our large volume agencies, our commercial services, are already using EPCRs. I think there's probably a handful of volunteer ALS agencies that are still doing paper. I don't know what the thoughts of the group are. Scott?
Just a quick, it's related to this. This sort of begs the question of these ALS services that are AEMT or paramedic, and they have one or two ALS providers that are in the service. You know, I think these two things kind of come together, because if you put a requirement in place that says if you're an AEMT service or higher, even if it's paramedic, is that going to change the matrix, so to speak? Is that going to change the services that do it? And maybe that's not a bad thing, but I think as Mike's asking us to have these discussions, I think that's probably a very related sidebar to take into consideration.
Well, the controlled substance didn't change a thing down my way. with the one thing, you know,
But-
that they have one or two.
The problem is these are low level services. The issue with EPCR systems is that when you don't have that high volume exposure to them, the learning curve is it's substantial. And you know, I think this would have a way bigger impact on the level of service that's offered than controlled substances. That was just an unnecessary fight, you know, for a lot of reasons. But I think related to this, I think it would definitely change the demographics of the system, for sure. I'm not saying that that's one way or another.
I think, and I'll speak from, you know, our way, which may be different in other areas, that the majority of our volunteer ALS services have a small number of ALS providers. And typically, I mean, I think it's hard, there's not a lot of people that are paramedics strictly to volunteer in their agencies. Usually they're people that work commercially for another service that is already using PCR. So I don't know that it's going to have the same impact we think. Certainly there are a few ALS providers that just volunteer, that, you know, maybe use work commercially in that. But my sense is the opposite, that most of the ALS providers are probably already using them at work, and they're a small volunteer agency, they're still on paper.
It's not the issue for the ALS providers, though. It's all of the ones that don't do it, that are the BLS providers, that will get frustrated and say, not for me. I just think these are things that we have to include as part of our discussion. That's
I
all.
think that's true. I think the other part of it is that, you know, every other aspect of healthcare or any other industry in general is going to computerized records and computerized data entry and everything else. And I think, you know, we know the issues when you let doctors write charts, what happens and how bad the records are. Right, Dr. Clemency?
Indeed.
So,
But when I dictate, I spell really good.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
God bless Dragon.
Mike, what's the compliance downstate? Is there a greater compliance upstate New York compared to downstate? Because I know in the stat.
What do you mean compliance? You mean
For EPCR use for larger agencies?
Agencies that have gone to EPCR? So when you say downstate, you have to automatically exclude the entire 5 boroughs of New York City, because the 911 system there has always been managed by FDNY, and long ago they mandated that everybody will do electronic reporting. Both the FDNY ambulances and the volunteer hospitals that play in the 911 system. So they've been electronic forever, and when we went to NEMSIS, they just flipped over again because it was a requirement to play in the FIDNY 911 system. That leaves in the 5 boroughs the 50 to 70, I haven't got clear numbers from the New York City REMSCO, but small community volunteer ambulances. Well, actually, some of those are not so small. But what the New York City REMSCO did is got a grant to get those folks on electronic PCRs also. So that was driven not by the WREMAC wanting medical oversight. That was driven by the REMSCO wanted the data, and they knew it was good for the system, so they finagled a grant to get everybody on. So that takes care of New York City. Nassau County is kind of like here. There are 2 big players there: the North Well, which used to be North Shore LIJ, and the Nassau County Police Department, EMS. They run a majority of the calls, and they are both electronic. When you go out to Suffolk County, they installed a county EPCR system managed by the county, and they have 110 services in Suffolk County. Only like 2 of them ever got on the system, and they since have dropped the county system. That is not quite sure what happened there. I think it was more of the local agencies didn't want to comply, so they did the passive-aggressive thing and just never came on board. But there was never a mandate from Suffolk County for political reasons. When you come back upstate, Westchester and Westchester, another political hotbed. They have 150 PSAPs in Westchester County alone, or something like that. It's all segmented and fiefdom. So some of them are, and some of them aren't in Westchester County. When you get to the Lower Hudson Valley, they are looking at installing a regional EPCR bridge that would be one EPCR system for the entire Hudson Valley region. So depending on what section of downstate you're in, they've made great progress. Other sections, they're making good progress, and others, it's failed because of political infighting, is the best way to describe it, is the polite way to describe it.
I mean, I think that, I mean, we're saying basically almost 90% of the patients taken care of in New York State are by agencies that use EPCRs, correct?
Yes.
And so I think, although it's maybe not the overall majority of agencies, it is affecting the majority of the patients being taken care of. Correct? So I guess if we look at it that way, right, what is the standard in the state, what is the standard in the healthcare industry, and the standard seems to be that most of our patients are on EPCRs.
I would look more what is the standard in the industry rather than what is the standard in the state, because the state is so fragmented. We have 18 regions, 16 WREMACs. We're very divided. You know, long ago they decided that our system would be divide and conquer rather than unify and build. Whole nother story. Yeah, we had that conversation on the phone, didn't we, Blair? So if by profession I'm a bureaucrat. By training I'm a registered nurse and at one time paramedic. I'm certified EMT level now. When I was a nurse, I was an ER nurse and a critical care nurse. And in hospitals I had residency programs and hosted medical students and had physician's assistants and nurse practitioners and such. The industry standard is that we are a medical model. We are medically driven by the physicians. And the physicians in the ER that we are an extension of, you physician, you docs sign off your PA charts, you sign off your medical students charts, you sign off your residents charts, and you do all of that oversight. But when it comes to outside the hospital, in the back of the ambulance, we're doing a lot of the same things that your folks that you're signing off are doing, yet you are not only not signing off, but you're monitoring from afar, and in some cases quite afar. So I would say that the industry standard is, at least the industry standard that I have seen, is that the physician has oversight, and the physician needs to have oversight. And the systems need to be in place for the physicians to now have that oversight, seeing as we are constantly expanding the scope of practice of paramedics and EMS.
Any other?
Just a quick question, Mike, and you can kick me later for asking this, but the for the small entities that say they can't afford EPCR systems, and I know that currently our contractor for the bridge is ImageTrend. Is there ever futuristically the possibility that the state will open that up as an EPCR platform for certain entities in the EMS system, or no?
Not the state bridge.
Okay.
That's not why that's there.
I understand.
The state bridge is not there to be the PCR for everybody. It's there to be the data collection point. But there are efforts. The Susquehanna region, which is Binghamton, has forever had their own EPCR system regionally that everybody types in their PCRs into. They use that. Hudson Valley is looking to install similar. I think they're actually working on that. Now. There are other regions that are working on that. And then there are regions like Southwestern Radana that have facilitated group purchasing and getting one software vendor for the region and such. So and with our system being so diversified and so many players in it, it is much better for the EPCR system to be localized rather than statewide. Frankly, if we had one state system, in theory that would be nice, but in practicality at 3 o'clock in the morning when the state system broke and nobody in the state could do a PCR or get it to the hospital, that would be a major problem. So,
Josh, I'd like to make a motion if that would be all right.
You can make a motion.
I understand that there are a lot of moving pieces to this. There's a lot of data that we can't get today. I'll make a motion that we create a work group that takes input from the program agencies or regional councils to figure out where the current state is, where we are, identify a potential cost impact, and then work with you and your team to bring us back kind of a summary report and recommendations back in September at the next meeting.
Second. Were you volunteering to
No.
head that group? Because that's what I heard.
No.
Just a question on the motion. Is it the role, in your view, of the REMAC or the REMSCO to mandate ePCR use? Because you're speaking to the New York State experience and kind of heard both. So which group do you think is that?
So you have to keep perspective that the REMAC is a standing subcommittee of the REMSCO.
Of three of them, in our case too. So
Of three of them.
even more yeah.
And that's not just by contract, that's by design of the law.
Right.
The law also says that PCRs are part of the QA program that is overseen by the REMAC. So, ultimately, could the REMAC say, yes, this is good, and take it to the REMSCOs, and the REMSCOs say, no way? Yeah, well, then, that's a fight that you're all going to have. But it's up to the REMACs to say that, yeah, this is best practice in healthcare and medicine and emergency medicine these days. This is what we need to do.
But you would see this as something that would actually need the REMSCO, because we have some things that we can do independently of the REMSCO and some things that we can't. And so you'd see this as something that need REMSCO approval.
Whether you get all three of the REMSCOs to bless it or not, that's foreign territory to me. And it depends greatly on the relationship that you have with your REMSCOs.
I think it would be a great discussion for the work group.
Yep, good.
We have a medical director that mandates that they be on electronic medical record in order to be under his, and it works very well.
Yeah, that's all.
Shall we vote?
Yep.
All right, so the motion was to put together a work group to look at ePCRs, agencies affected, and cost implications and things like that, right?
Come back with a summary
Recommendations in
recommendations in
September.
September meeting.
All right. Any other discussion about the motion? Then, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the motion carries. What I'll ask Karen to do is to send out an email with interested parties that can maybe get together, whether it's by conference call or whatever, we'll try to set up a meeting in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to ask a couple of things of the program agencies and the regional councils and representatives in the coming months over the summer to take back to not just your regional councils, but also to your county councils and all of your agencies, is to start to discuss the number of CC classes we're having versus paramedic classes, and share some of the long-term implications and concerns that we had today at the meeting, and get some input from them, and trying to look at plans for increased paramedic classes going forward. I'm also going to ask that the program agencies by, let's say, July 15th, can get a list submitted to Karen that we can look at. This will be in between our meetings, but look at the number of the compliance with PPAs at that time, and hopefully by July 15th, because we're kind of halfway through that reporting period before they come offline on August 1st, make sure that we've notified all the medical directors of any of their agencies or providers that haven't complied at that point. And lastly, I'm also going to ask that the program agencies look at, get a breakdown of ALS agencies by level, so AMT, CC, paramedic, number of agencies, the number of agencies on ePCR versus paper PCRs as well, because I think that's going to be important to that working group to move forward. All right. Lastly, then we move into some of the approvals in that. Before we do that, there's one item that's not on the agenda, which is very quick. I have a letter here from the Big Lakes REMSCO that is saying that they recommend Lori Schwab to be filling one of their open seats representing their REMSCO, and I believe that needs a vote, correct? Yes. Does that need? So that comes as a nomination from them. We don't need a.
Yeah. So the regional councils approved the representatives. and make that recommendation to the REMAC, who then has to vote on it.
So we don't need a motion for that, because it comes as a motion from them, we just need to vote on
That's
that, correct? All right, so, at the recommendation of making Lori one of our voting REMAC members, correct?
Each council gets one member.
One and an alternate.
This is for the at-large, when they're at-large seats, correct? Yes.
Article 4 of your bylaws, membership, each regional council shall nominate one current council member to sit on the REMAC.
But there are also at-large members for each.
Yeah. Do the at-large have to be positions?
No. It actually says in the next sentence, this nomination does not have to be a position.
Okay. And this nomination is for one of the at-large seats. Correct, Wade? That's what it says in the letter?
Yes.
Okay.
What at-large seat?
What's that?
I thought those are two different things.
Regional councils can only nominate 2 at-large positions.
That's what I'm thinking. I think the
They have
at-large
to be
positions have to be
positions.
positions.
At-large have to be positions, and then you get one regional council member. The at-large is positions. One regional council member who's not a position.
The only non-position is one council member, is what I was told.
Correct.
Everyone else has to be a position.
All right, and do we have?
Do they have a council member?
Yes.
Okay. So Wade, you are the council representative on the REMAC, voting member. Okay. So is there another seat on the REMAC? It has to be a physician at large, correct? Okay. So
Can it
then.
be a position from New
If they're in the region?
Yeah.
He's our medical.
Yeah, so you're talking about Dr.
Yeah.
Carney, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, then he could be an at-large member, absolutely. So, so then unfortunately, I guess that we cannot vote or approve that.
Sorry, we like you.
All right, just a reminder, the next meeting is going to be at the Lake Plains office in September. What's the date, September 3rd? All right.
Third Wednesday.
The third Wednesday in September will be at Lake Plains. The address is in the agenda. And I am going to accept a motion to approve en masse the medical director approvals, pad notifications, level of care changes, naloxone participation notification, check and inject notification, CPAP approvals, PCR approvals. And I think that that's it. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Any other?
Two things. UBMD is doing a medical director base station course the first Tuesday of July. If you have a doc or someone else would like to attend, please let Karen know. And it's time for the summer thing, right?
Yes.
So I make a motion to let Dr. Walters do the business of the REMAC while we are in recess for the summer, subject to approval at the next regularly scheduled REMAC meeting.
These are typically business things, medical director changes, approvals, things like that. But just so that we don't hold up agencies from moving forward in the couple of months over the summer before we meet again.
Second.
So, in a second, any discussion, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And carries. Any other?
Just one quick thing, sorry to bother you guys, but from the program agency perspective, if you guys could just remember to scan any level of care changes or medical director changes to our office, that way we catch up on it before the 2-year cycle on their renewal would be very, very helpful. We actually need the physical medical director verification form, but if you could just scan them over to us, that'd be great. I think a lot of you guys are doing it, but sometimes it's sort of hit and miss, or we don't get them, and then we have an issue, we identify an issue, we call the wrong medical director because that's in our database. So if you've had a good relationship
I was
with
gonna say, we
a bunch.
just do a continuous one?
Yeah, continuous one's fine.
Okay.
So, or we can talk offline about it.
Should we include the central office or not?
If you want to send it directly to Kathy Shaw, that'd be fine too. It doesn't matter. It's just we like to have a copy. We'll then scan it into their electronic file, and then generally we just forward it to Kathy. I've been just forwarding them to Kathy Shaw, the ones that I do get, and then they update our prod database. So it'd be very helpful if we could just work that out. Okay.
Any other issues before we adjourn?
I'm still looking for your vice chair nominations.
I decided in the interest of time, since Dr. Lynch was sitting 2 seats away from me, that I wasn't going to nominate him today, so we'll wait till he doesn't show up to the next meeting.
Dr. Barr's absent.
Very good point.
Not worth it.
All right.
Not worth that.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for sticking in there, all you guys on the phone, despite starting so late. Appreciate it.